me you're getting ready to do some door and window work, Art.
Yeah, that we are, Tech. Our regular body man is back home with a bad cold, so I'm going to get Al here to help out.
I hope I can help, Tech. But adjusting doors and windows is kind of new to me.
You can relax, Al. Art and I can give you a little help.
Yeah, Al. Now, suppose Tech and I review the main points on four-door sedan body and glass adjustments, and we'll get into the door and window story on the hardtop model. Now, for example, when checking a door, you have to consider appearance, ease of operation, and how well it seals. Ask yourself these questions. Is the door centered in the opening? Is there even spacing all around the door? Does the door fit flush with the body panels? Does it look like a good door fit? And test how the door opens and closes. Does it operate easily? If the door is centered and the striker is located properly, you'll have no trouble with this point. Finally, see that the door, when it's closed, puts enough compression on the weather strip so that there's a good seal against dust and water leaks.
That's something to shoot at, all right. But is it possible to get all three conditions perfect on every door?
You can come mighty close, Al. Sometime you may have to compromise a little.
Yeah, Al, you might have to sacrifice a little on even spacing, appearance, just to get a good watertight seal. In spite of this, however, you can get all three conditions and still end up with door and window adjustments that are perfectly acceptable to the owner.
Why not explain how that door can be moved around in the opening, Art?
Yeah, I was just coming to that, Tech. You can move the door up, down, fore, aft, in or out, whatever's needed. For fore and aft adjustment, you may have to remove the inside hardware and trim to get at the hinge bolts. Here, take a look at this hinge, Al. It's the same L-mounted deal you've seen before. The pillar half can be shifted by just loosening the bolts. That's because there's a floating tapped plate behind the pillar.
How about the other half?
Well, the door half is held to a reinforcement panel by 3 bolts. These also enter a floating tapped plate, which permits adjustment.
Okay. Now, how about the rear doors?
Well, rear doors use an L-mounted hinge. The pillar half is mounted to a support plate in the center post. Bolt holes in the plate are elongated and slightly oversized. The door half butts against the front face of the rear door. 3 retaining bolts pass through a reinforcement panel inside the door.
And listen, Al, don't ever let me catch you trying to bend the door hinge. That hinge is so strong, it'll be the last thing to bend.
Okay, Tech, don't worry. I'll do the job right.
Attaboy, Al. Now, after any adjustment, recheck how the latch engages the striker. The striker may need repositioning. As a matter of fact, some mechanics remove the striker when they adjust a door. They reinstall it in its proper position when the work is done. That way, they're sure it's right.
I see, Art. Now, I've got a question. Somebody mentioned shimming the body on a job we had last week. What's the story on that?
Well, I'll raise this car and show you, Al. Body shims control alignment of the body on the frame. If body bolts are not tightened uniformly, it'll sometimes pull a door opening out of shape.
By adding or removing shims and by torquing the body bolts, that's 15 foot-pounds for Plymouth, you remember, you can square up the opening to get a better door fit.
That clears it up, fellas. What next?
Well, as soon as I lower this car, I'd like to show you a new tool that's handy for removing the inside door handle and window regulator handle, Al. Remember that these handles are fastened with spring clips. This tool makes removing the handles easy whenever you find it necessary. From the left side of the handle boss, slide the pronged jaws between the boss and the washer that protects the trim. The regulator handle should point down. When the lip between the prongs contacts the clip, squeeze the tool. That releases the clip from its locking groove in the shaft, and you can remove the handle easily.
To reinstall the handle, keep the concave side of the washer out. Then slide the spring clip and handle over the shaft until the clip engages the locking groove.
You can use this tool for removing the trim, too. The prongs prevent trim clips from pulling through the panel.
Good suggestion, Art.
Now, here's something else you ought to know, Al. The new pull-type outside handle is fastened by 2 studs and retaining nuts. To remove it, you have to remove the inside hardware and the trim panel. Use an extension wrench to remove the nuts, then pull the handle away from the door.
Okay. Any tips on installing that handle?
Just one, Al. Put a little Mopar luber plate on the lock slide and the lock actuator first. Then install the handle.
That'll do, Tech.
Fine. I'm sure you won't have any trouble with the standard model doors. Now, let's take a look at the Plymouth four-door hardtop model. You'll find that the hinges and the door adjustments are similar to those on the sedan. The thing to keep in mind, however, is that with no center pillars showing, spacing between the front and rear doors should be the same as that at the front fender and at the rear quarter panel. In other words, proper centering of one door depends on the fit of the other door.
Yeah, I see how that figures. But I'm wondering, where would you start on hardtop models if you had a door condition to correct?
Always start with the rear door, Al. Two sides are bordered by fixed panels. The rear by the quarter panel and the bottom by the sill panel.
That's right, Tech. Then you got to be sure that the door contours match with each other and with the adjacent body panels.
Is there some in and out movement possible at the hinges?
Yep, right at the hinge pillars. Again, start with the rear door. Get it flush with the sill and quarter panels, then match the front door contour with that of the rear door. Now, you can shift the fender to match the front door contour and to even up the spacing between the door, the hood, and cowl, you know. You can raise the fender, too, if necessary, by loosening the upper fender to cowl bolt. Then lift up the top rear edge of the fender and install a rubber shim at the bolt. If you move the fender, check the spacing between the hood and fenders. You might have to loosen the hood hinge bolts and shift the hood to even up that spacing.
Anything special on the door hinges?
Well, the front door hinges on all hardtops are the same as those on sedans, but there are two types of hinges used on rear doors. You'll find U-mounted butt-type hinges on Plymouth and Dodge hardtop rear doors. Other hardtop models use an L-mounted strap-type hinge. This means that on the Plymouth and Dodge, you can get an in and out adjustment and some slight vertical movement by shifting the hinges at the pillar.
You can get a fore and aft adjustment too, Al, but you'll have to use shims at the hinges.
Fair enough. How about the other model hardtops?
Well, since Imperial, Chrysler, and DeSoto hardtop models use an L-mounted strap-type hinge on rear doors, you can get an in and out and a slight up and down adjustment at the pillar. The hinge straps extending into the door are secured by 3 bolts to a reinforcement panel. A floating tapped plate makes fore and aft adjustment possible. You follow that?
Yeah, I catch.
Hey, somebody better turn this record over. We've just about used up one side.
Now, getting back to the Plymouth and Dodge hardtop models, I suppose that new window arrangement can be adjusted.
That it can, Al, but always get a good door fit first. Then you can realign the windows if necessary.
Yeah, Tech's right, Al. The front door glass and vent window, incidentally, are similar to the glass setup we've had on our two-door hardtop models. But notice that rear door glass feature. The rear door window has 2 parts that fold in and fold out together. The rear section, called a pivot window, is held at its top by a slide that rides in grooves in both window frames. Now, that slide gets the pivot section to follow the main glass section as it travels up and down.
It sure is a different setup, Art. Now, how do I go about adjusting it? Or all the windows, for that matter?
Well, if the glass needs to be realigned for better appearance, better sealing, or to correct a rattle, keep this in mind. On Plymouth and Dodge, begin all adjustments with the front vent window.
Yeah, Al, and it's mighty important to get the front vent window lined up with the windshield post and drip molding first. Now, once you do that, you can easily shift the other window sections in line. Keep the vent frame spacing at the pillar even and about the same as the uniform spacing between the door and the fender. Now, we should have about a half-inch spacing between the top of the vent frame and the roof side rail with the door closed. The vent should fit behind the outer lip of the roof rail weather strip for a good seal.
I understand, Art. Now, what about adjusting that vent?
Well, remove the inside hardware and trim and the inner panel cover plate first, then loosen the lock nut for the division bar adjusting screw. The oversized screw hole at this point permits up, down, fore, and aft movements of the division bar, depending on how you adjust the vent or the main glass section of the front door. Now, you can pivot the vent window fore or aft to square it up at the top by means of this large stud. This stud extends down from the forward edge of the vent. Two adjusting nuts secure the stud to a bracket inside the door. To pivot the vent down at the front, loosen the upper adjusting nut and tighten the lower nut. To raise the front edge of the vent, loosen the lower adjusting nut and tighten the upper nut.
Yeah, and by means of this adjusting screw at the bottom of the division bar, you can tilt the vent frame in or out at its top.
That's right, Tech. To tilt the top of the frame in, turn the adjusting screw counterclockwise. When you get the proper adjustment, hold the adjusting screw in place and retighten the lock nut. Now, it's also easy to adjust the front door main glass. When raised, it should be even with the top of the vent frame. When fully lowered, it should be even with the top of the door panels. And if you need to adjust the glass, loosen both of the glass upper stops. Raise the window, and if the glass doesn't go up even with the vent wing frame, loosen the large pivot nut in the center of the regulator cross arms.
Now, what's that going to do?
Well, Al, the large pivot nut controls upper travel. The glass lower run channels control the leveling. So, with the pivot nut loose, raise the window to its proper height, even with the vent frame, and tighten the nut.
You can shift the glass rear run channel fore or aft by means of two attaching screws at the lower end and one screw at the channel upper end.
When would that be necessary?
Well, you might want to do that to make the top of the glass parallel with the roof rail or to remove any free play of the glass in the channel.
I got you now. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Now, with your adjustment made and the window up, you tighten the division bar channel so the glass, when fully raised, is square with the vent frame and roof side rail.
Can you move the lower end of that glass rear run channel in and out, too?
Oh, sure thing, Al, by loosening one attaching bolt. You can move the upper end of the channel, too. Just remove this knockout plug in the rear face of the door and loosen the adjusting screw, which is underneath. Move the channel in or out and retighten the screw. When the window's been raised to its finally adjusted position, move the up stops against the glass frame channel and tighten the retaining screws. Now, for proper glass down travel, loosen the down stop. Lower the window until its top is even with the top of the door panels. Hold the down stop against the glass frame channel and tighten the retaining screw.
After stop adjustments are made, see if you still need a better seal at the top. If so, you can loosen the roof rail weather strip retainer attaching screws and move the retainer in or out.
I see. Now, how about that rear door window?
Oh, that rear window is adjustable, too. Raise it as far as it'll go. Then you can loosen the 5 regulator attaching screws and pivot the glass to square it up with the rear edge of the front door glass. You can also raise or lower the glass to even up the top line for uniform spacing at the roof rail. Slotted holes in the door panel make this movement possible. Now, tighten the screws when you get the right adjustment.
To improve spacing and the seal between the main glass sections, you can move the rear glass fore or aft.
Yeah, Al. Just loosen these 2 bolts holding the upper flanged end of each run channel to the door inner panel. At that same point, you can get an in or out adjustment to get the glass up against the cat's whiskers. With a fore or aft adjustment, loosen the screws at the run channel lower ends so you'll avoid any binding. Now, to tilt the glass in or out at the top for a better fit and seal at that point, loosen the run channel lower screws.
How about up and down stops on the rear door main glass?
There are no up stops, my boy, but there is a down stop. Hey, Art?
Yeah, that's right. It's on this large plate in the inner panel lower section. You adjust it to keep the top of the upper glass frame flush with the door panels when the glass is down.
I see. Now, does that bring us to the pivot window?
Yep. And you can adjust it for a proper arc with the roof rail at the curved part, Al.
Yeah, Tech's right. That pivot window is mounted on a two-piece bracket attached to the door inner panel. You can loosen the attaching bolts and make up, down, fore, aft, and some pivoting adjustments. You can move the pivot window in or out for better sealing by loosening the two bolts that attach the pivot window bracket to the panel bracket.
Yes, but remember there are serrations at that point, so loosen the bolts enough for the serrations to clear each other.
Okay, Tech, I'll watch it. I suppose you can shift that roof rail weather strip retainer over the rear door main glass or the pivot window if necessary, right?
Yeah, that you can do, Al, but only as a last resort. You wouldn't want to spoil the inside appearance at the headlining. Well, that about covers Plymouth and Dodge hardtop glass adjustments. On other models, you'd follow a different sequence, but you'll find it all explained in this reference book.
In that case, Art, I'll really go over that book from cover to cover.
It will be well worth your while, Al, my boy. The more you know about the adjustments provided, the easier you'll be able to make them.
Not only that, my boy. Nobody needs to tell you or any mechanic. Good door and window fitting is mighty important to an owner. When we know how to do that, we won't have any trouble keeping our customers happy.